Good morning, Summa scholars. Oh man, good. You said 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1, and I say we're live.
Oh man.
I always do this. It's every day.
Are we in?
We are in now.
Guys, welcome to the Daily Summa. Today is Tuesday, April 8th, the 5th week of Lent. We're back and firing on all cylinders today, guys. This is going to take a little getting used to because I'm not sitting in this room. There's actual people here in front of me. That's going to be strange. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Doing well? Can they hear you? Do you have your mic on, Joe?
No.
Oh, Joe.
We have it on once.
Yeah, we need you, Joe.
Okay.
The people crave some Joe. They need their morning Joe. They need their morning Joe.
I'm only going to do it while we're doing this part, though.
Okay. Okay, Prima Donna. Do we have... Well, you can't say bad words.
I'm not on the mic yet.
You think they can't hear that? They can hear the cat meowing outside the door.
We'll find out.
Especially, there's a certain nun I'm friends with. I'm not going to name her. But
Yeah, that'd be embarrassing to you.
I hope she doesn't watch this because she has particular adverse reaction to that word.
I doubt it came through.
Oh, well, this I didn't realize this. Oh, this is College of St. Joseph the Worker. Did you make this? How did you get this print on there? Special printer. Does it move? How do you get it to navigate the roundness?
Paper's flexible.
Mm-hmm. So it's on and it transfers.
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Printer.
Yeah.
It's transfer paper. Come on, man.
That's all.
You don't have to make it all mystical sounding.
That's a type of print. That's a type of printing.
Special printer that takes special toner, and the toner is compatible with prints.
Okay. It's kind of like those tattoos you got when you're a little kid.
Exactly.
Guys, today's sponsor is the College of St. Joseph the Worker. You can have your little kiddies come and learn to be a carpenter and also learn some liberal arts and studies and things like that. It's very good. Check it out. Look it up online, College of St. Joseph the Worker. Guys, we have an interesting page today. We're talking about the divine name, the much talked about Ehya, in Hebrew, Aleph, He, Yod, He, which is very close to the Tetragrammaton, which is Yod, He, Vav, He. There's two He's. And there's controversy, or as Alex O'Connor would say, controversy. How do they say it in England?
I don't know. They say everything wrong. So
They say everything wrong, man. They don't say it right like we do over here. It's like the Queen's English or whatever, the early English. That was just making preparations for the real English that would happen when we got over here.
That's right.
This is like some people.
It's all God's plan.
It's all part of God's big, beautiful plan. It's like I knew some people back in the day when I first became Christian in the evangelical world who would come to this place I used to work called Pilgrim's Bookstore. And there would be like these lively discussions. It's kind of what set me off on my journey to Catholicism, basically, because it was a lot of lively discussion every day, arguing and debating about scripture. So I kind of learned like street rhetoric, not formal rhetoric, but I learned to like argue back and forth. Mark McNeil, who's helping with this thing and who went on to do great things for apologetics in the church. We would like iron sharpens iron each other, but there was these guys that would come in who were just, I mean, if I would say it crassly, I would say whack jobs, kind of not. And some of them were 1611 King James Version only.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we would ask the obvious question. Well, if this is the only true Bible, like I've said, do you believe 1611 over the original Hebrew and Greek? Yes. Wait, you believe that the 1611 King James Version is the inspired version above the Greek and Hebrew?
Finally got it right.
That's right. The Holy Spirit was there in the King James. It's like, man, once you're at that level,
They finally got it right, man.
there's no.
It's the pinnacle.
Once someone's at that level, I'm just, there's no. They need a different kind of help than what a conversation can do. You know what I'm saying?
Perhaps.
They need special help. It was like there was another guy who came in. Oh gosh. And again, don't picture your normal person, because you're going to think I'm kind of making fun of this person, and I am, of course, but religious person. He at one point, and he had shown signs of being off for a while, but he was like charismatic, sort of. And so he had people who followed him and listened to him and stuff. And one day he comes in and he says that the Lord had led him to do a campaign against pornography. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And what was surprising, though, and what we found surprising, was one of the things that the Lord led him to do, because you have to know your enemy.
Oh, sure.
He had to buy a bunch of pornography magazines.
Yeah.
And just kind of, so he can know what he's fighting against.
I just heard about a guy last night who, a friend of his got arrested because he used to go into pornography shops and put holy cards and tuck them inside of all the magazines.
Mm.
And someone started complaining. They had so many complaints that the next time he came into the shop, they got him arrested.
Wow.
Which I'm surprised you get arrested for putting something into a place instead of taking things out of a place.
Oh yeah, that's for sure too. Yeah, they can do that.
Well, I
They
could
can
make,
arrest you
I
for
could
doing
make
literally
jokes.
anything,
I
Paul.
could make jokes riffing off of that one, but I think we'll forego that.
Yeah.
We'll save that for later.
Yeah.
What did that remind me of? It reminded me of a saint that I heard of recently who would go and beg for money, and then he'd use that money to hire prostitutes. I mean, you've heard of this guy?
That's another the early father,
Yeah. It's one of the early. And then, of course, he would minister to them and help them and give them something they needed. And then,
He bought them for the night so they weren't out on the street.
so they weren't out on the street. And then he would talk to them about the Lord, and kind of like a father, like counseling. And then when he died, I guess people had noticed. And so, of course, there's gossip about the guy. And then all these prostitutes came out of the woodwork and were like, told the story of what he did for them and how helpful he was. I mean, that's an interesting thing about judging. Like, if you saw someone paying for prostitutes and going in with them, you're gonna judge.
I mean, yeah, you can't help that. That's just what it is.
I mean, okay, so it's two things. It's one, do not judge.
Right.
But it's also just kind of be aware of how you're.
Yeah. Well, it's like. Also, if I saw a fella doing that, I would just be like, yeah, he's not that guy. He's probably just
Right.
going to
It's
be
like
with this lady. Yeah.
It's like I'm aware of myself, the way I look, like, and I'm always aware of that when people are acting a certain way towards me. I'm like, I can't get too upset, because I mean, if I saw me coming down the street, I wouldn't think, oh, that guy probably teaches a page of the Summa Theologica every day. That's not what the first thought would go through my mind.
No. Yeah. Dirty bum.
Dirty bum.
Dirty bum.
Who's that witch?
Yeah, exactly.
Who's that witch?
That's right.
I still say that.
I can.
Ooh,
It's one of my favorite stories ever. I'll share this story with you guys, and then maybe I can tell the one who said it to watch the beginning and hear it. The one who said it is Chok Shakerli, but no one's going to know what that means except for Chok Shakerli. But when we first met, this is an ex-girlfriend, and when we hadn't even met. I had seen her previously in a park, and I was immediately captivated. If my future wife is watching, I mean, I wasn't that captivated. But when I first saw her, I was like, it's like, this girl, who is this amazing? And she was just sitting under a tree in a white sweater reading. But then a few days later, a few weeks later, I don't remember, I'm playing a gig, and I see her in the front row. That's that girl. So I went and grabbed a t-shirt from our merch and I threw it in her face, like a pie in the face. And then she came up afterwards and said, thank you. And then I think I probably said we play every Monday night at Helios, which is now Avant-Garde Art Garden in Houston. And then she came out and we became boyfriend, girlfriend. But she tells me later that night, before she even knew I was in the band or anything, I came walking in to the place, and that's when she first saw me. And she was with her friend. I had on my leather top hat. I had a long trench coat that was brown and thick with like bear fur around the edge, and boots, of course, cowboy boots. And she looks at her. I looked kind of Dickensian. I look like perhaps, who's the guy who killed all the prostitutes? Jack the Ripper, yeah. And so when she first saw me, she leans over to her friend, and in a good way, as she always says when I tell this story in front of her, no, but in a good way. She leans over to her friend and goes, ooh, he looks like a dirty murderer. And it was just infatuation at first sight for both of us, turning into a beautiful, beautiful friendship, which perdures and it remains to this day. Hope you're doing well, Talk Chicago. Should we teach some Thomas Aquinas?
Do you want to move the skull?
Let's move the skull through the desert. Oh, also, I will offer up today's learning to for Chalk Shikari and her soul and happiness. Of course, she's atheist and doesn't believe in souls, but still, whatever. We always argued about that. She's atheist. She called me a Bible thumper, and I called her a material thumper. Did we move the skull?
I didn't yet. I thought you might want to say
Let's
something.
go ahead and move the skull.
All right, so to move it once and then once again.
Because
we missed yesterday.
Because we missed yesterday, but we're not going to talk about that.
If you say so.
Guys, we are moving quickly through this desert on our way to Easter, otherwise known as Pascha. And what a day, glorious day that will be, in which we will have 8 days, an octave of feasting, celebration, no more fasting, and no more Daily Summa for 8 days. Don't forget that, guys.
My favorite part.
It's going to be wonderful. Sleeping late every day.
Dude, I'm not even going to see you. I'm going to intentionally just be like, no, great.
Joe, you know you love, you weep to not see me.
There's no heart in that. He doesn't believe that.
Yeah. Today is an interesting page because we are talking about that divine name. And let's hit it up. First, we got to do some house cleaning and go back to Article 10 and finish up with this page 141 in your books if you're following at home. And here we go. We're just going to jump straight into the top of the page because I don't even remember what he was talking about. It was a reply to Larry. Hence, it is evident that a Catholic saying that an idol is not God contradicts the pagan asserting that it is God, because each of them uses this name God to signify the true God. For when the pagan says an idol is God, he does not use this name as meaning God he does not use this name as meaning God in opinion, for he would then speak the truth. As also Catholics sometimes use the name in that sense, as in the Psalms, all the gods are the Gentiles or demons. Okay, so we're going to the next part. Are we trying to find where this is?
Yeah.
It's at the end of Article 10, right before the reply to objection 4. Well, no, yesterday we finished the page prior, which was reply to objection 1 at the end of... Yeah. I'm just doing the house cleaning because it's a daily page, so we do everything that's on the page each day. So I'm just kind of cleaning up the thing. I think we read this yesterday also, but I'm just kind of cleaning up. And then he says the same remark applies to the second and third objections. For these reasons proceed from the different predication of the name and not from the various significations. We said this all yesterday. You can mean the word in 2 different ways. When a pagan says that their idol is God, they think it's the real God. But if they had said it meaning that it's not a real God, then they would agree with us, but they don't. And so there's different ways of using that word God. Okay, reply to objection 4, which is Reuven, I think. Yeah. The term animal applied to a true and a pictured animal is not purely equivocal. For the philosopher takes equivocal names in a large sense, including analogous names, because also being, which is predicated analogically, is sometimes said to be predicated equivocally of different predicaments. So it's the same thing we said before. If you say you have a real animal, a living animal, like the horses that used to be behind me, and then you have a picture of a horse, that also is animal. That's a picture of an animal. So it's analogical. It's an analogy in a sense. It's an analogy of a horse, not a real horse. If somebody thought that that was a real animal, and the thing he was saying yesterday was, he would be using the term univocally, animal out in the field, animal on the photo. But he's wrong about that because the photo is not a real animal. He's using the term univocally as if it's one thing, but only in his opinion, man. It's like your opinion, man. That was Thomas's whole thing. It's just an opinion. So we're seeing the differences in being and how it's expressed with this quirky little thing we have of being intellects embodied, and how we have a divine being who is intellect and logos himself. And so how do those things interplay and interact with each other? It's a great mystery of life and a beautiful, beautiful thing. Reply to objection cinco. Cinco de replio.
Step 5.
It is for you English speakers in the house.
Yep, that is me.
Neither a Catholic nor a pagan knows the very nature of God as it is in itself, but each one knows it according to some idea of causality or excellence or emotion. We said that before. Also, there's a tribe that's on an island somewhere that no one has accessed yet. I don't know if you're familiar with this, Paul, but there's a tribe of beavers, yeah. There is video of people trying, like they have their boats that come up and then they come out and start shooting arrows at them, and they decided, the Sentinel Islands? Sentinel Islands? I need to look it up because I reference these people all the time because they're endlessly fascinating to me, and they're also a good example of something, which is humanity not touched by humanity. We're all so affected by each other that it's hard to kind of say what has affected what, but these people have never had contact with people, and so to see how they think, that's why so many people want to contact them, to kind of see what their life is like, what they believe, how they think. But anyway, the point of this being that they still would have the ability, even though they don't have the divine revelation, they would have the ability, just like Aristotle, to reason back towards the first cause from causality, which is what he said there, causality or excellence. They used the word immanence before. I don't know why he changed it, but God's excellence, immanence, his presentness in creation, and remotion, taking things away and seeing what's the remainder, or apophatic theology. So a pagan can take this name God in the same way when he says an idol is God, as the Catholic does in saying an idol is not God. But if anyone should be quite ignorant of God altogether, he cannot even name him, unless perhaps, as we use names, the meaning of which we do not know. Okay, this is all just a bunch of simple stuff. You can use the word God in different ways, metaphorically, and some people can be wrong in the way they use it. Let's get to the meat of today's article. Whether this name, it's Article 11, whether this name, He Who is the most proper name of God. I've said this before, but there's some slight grammatical controversies about the name. The Hebrew word is Ahyah. The Rashi says that that's a future tense. Christians always translate it present. I am who I am. Ahyah asher ahyah. But Rashi wants to say that word means I will be what I will be. And then Rashi says that when God said that, Moses said to God, why bring up a future calamity? the reason they say that Moses said that is because they were in a present calamity, being in Egypt and slaves. But God, when he said Ahiyah Asher Ahiyah, is saying, I will be what I will be, or I will manifest myself to them, or I will bring them out of a future exiles. I think Rashi says he's referring to the Babylonian exile, Persian exile, and that. Okay, so be that as it may, there is times in Scripture where the Ahiyah is used. You can translate it, I will. Not in reference to God, but that terminology is used in other places in Scripture, just with regular narrative between people. It's not like a phrase in Hebrew that's used only for God. It's a term that's used among people also. And you could translate it present tense, it seems to me, but I would need a more informed grammatical argument about this to really, that's a limit to my knowledge as far as the true ins and outs of Hebrew grammar is what I'm getting to. So I'm just going to let you guys know that there is this little discussion out there, but we're going to take Thomas's view. I'm sure Thomas and the boys were well aware of Hebrew, and I'm sure they knew. Now, of course, the Jews have a much more intimate knowledge of Hebrew because they've been using it for thousands of years and they use it all the time. And Thomas and the boys are just learning it, and they're learning it out of cultural context and everything. So I would defer to the Jews a lot in how they talk about their own language. But again, I just want everyone to know that there is this slight controversy, which is, as we have said, where the interesting things are. You want more controversy, you want more discussion, you want more darkness, because darkness is the place you have not excavated yet. Darkness is the place where the treasure is hidden. You want to start to be comfortable with not knowing. That's part of what we're doing here in the Daily Summa, that you become comfortable with not knowing the answer, with feeling like you didn't understand. That's what I had said a few days ago about Christians not really understanding their own religion. Of course, that's a broad and perhaps could be interpreted as an arrogant statement, but I'm saying it sort of like a shock value to get you to think and realize that you don't understand. Christians say so many things that are just antithetical to actual Christianity. Like, for instance, like I mentioned, when God comes to Abraham, Abraham splits the sacrifice in half and the third bowl goes down the middle, and it says God descended and there was a terrifying darkness. When God descended on Mount Sinai, there was a terrifying darkness and lightning and thunder, peals of thunder. When Jesus appears to John in Revelation, who had laid his head on his chest, yes, I'm aware there's a controversy of which John it was. I don't care. It was the Apostle John. When John lays his head on his chest at the Passover Seder, but when he sees him there, he falls on his face as dead. So you have to kind of realize he is your beloved. He is your friend, but he's not Buddy Jesus. He's not Scooby-Doo, is what I'm saying. So you have to be comfortable with the terrifying darkness. You have to be comfortable with the not knowing. And even when we see the divine essence, we cannot plumb the depths of the eternal one. That's why you have to become comfortable with death, which I don't like. Not a big fan. I wish it could be done a different way. But there's going to be, in a sense, an eternal death. And that eternal death is eternal life. Remember the great mystery. The greatest archetype and image we have of the divine life is, as the Jews have said first, but Pope John Paul II, Saint Pope John Paul II, who is friends with a lot of rabbis, brought out in the Theology of the Body, which was shocking to the Christian world. Wow, this is like new stuff. Pope John Paul II's a genius. No, it's been said for 1,000 years by the Jews. Theology of the Body is not a new thing. That the marital act is, in French, they call it the petite mort, the little death, when at the climax of the marital act. That's the little death. That's when you lose yourself. your control, your regular perceptions of life just collapse for a while, and you're in this other state. That's a state of death, of bittul, as the word would be in Hebrew. You're nullified. Yourself is nullified. Your will is nullified. And we are headed towards an eternal orgasmic love relationship in the Blessed Trinity. You couldn't live your life in that state. We're in a much lower state. And so to just understand that dying to yourself is actually the living in the life. That's why a snake kills you when it bites you. It's poison. And when Jesus wanted to heal you, he became the bronze snake, the serpent in the wilderness. These are all images that are trying to get through to you. All right, let's go into the divine name. Whether this name, he who is the most proper name of God. Here comes Larry up on the deck on the Beaver Galleon. It seems that this name, he who is the most proper name of God. Is the most proper name. For this name, God is an incommunicable name. But this name, he who is not an incommunicable name. Therefore, this name, he who is not the most proper name of God. The word God, as we said in the previous articles, is incommunicable. That is, you can't share it. You can't share the nature of Godness. But he's saying you can share the nature of isness because we have being. So that's a pretty good question. Since we have being and God has being, we're sharing in being. So it's communicable. Being is communicable. So it can't be the highest name because the word God is incommunicable. It's more distant. Objection 2, Ralph. Further, Dionysius says that the name of good excellently manifests all the processions of God, but it especially belongs to God to be the universal principle of all things. Therefore, this name good is supremely proper to God and not this name he who is. Let's just move on through the objections and then we'll get to the replies, because when you get to the reply, you have to repeat it anyway. Objection 3. Further, every divine name seems to imply relation to creatures, for God is known to us only through creatures. That's very Aristotelian. We come to know spiritual things through the material. That's why we always say you cannot be divorced from Malchus. Malchus is the word in the Sphirot, the divine emanations that refers to the sensible world, what you can see, taste, touch, hear, and smell. That's Malchus. What the materialist says is the only thing that exists. But that's the lowest shell of everything. Therefore, the divine names seem to imply creatures because God is known to us only through creatures. We come to know other more spiritual things. We abstract spiritual things from our senses, which is Aristotle. But this name, he who is, imports no relation to creatures. Therefore, this name, he who is not the most applicable to God. All right. Oh, I can throw this away. Here we go. Thomas is going to answer our question. On the contrary, it is written that when Moses asked, if they should say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And the Lord answered him, thou shalt say to them, Achia, Achia, he who is hath sent me to you. Therefore, this name, he who is most properly belongs to God. Well, he asked him, who are you? And he said that. And so that's an argument from authority. Let's see what the rational answer is. I answer that. This name, he who is most properly applied to God for 3 reasons. First, because of its signification. For it does not signify form, but simply existence itself. Hence, since the existence of God in his essence is his essence, the existence of God is his essence itself, which can be said of no other. It is clear that among other names, this one specifically denominates God, for everything is denominated by its form. A form is a limiting thing. A definition is a limiting thing. And existence itself as act or being your essence, being act and existence, is not defining. It is eternal. That's what Thomas is getting at. Every other name you give is a constricting element. That's the whole point of a definition. That's why I talked about the fence around the horse's pasture defines the border of the pasture. That's what the word definition means. We're in a world of constriction right now. The divine light has no constriction. In God and his life, there is no definition. There is no defining. But we, through a mercy of God, have been brought into a world where everything is definition. Everything is constriction. Or else everything would just be full, imminent light, and we would not be able to exist. We would not be a defined thing. Paul, Joe, Craig is a definition, not the all. But Thomas is telling you that this word, he who is, has reference to his being, his essence being existence. All right, so it's the most proper name to apply to him. Second, on account of its universality, for all other names are either less universal or, if convertible with it, adds something above it, at least an idea. Hence, in a certain way, they inform and determine it. Now, our intellect cannot know the essence of God itself in this life as it is in itself, but whatever mode is applied in determining what it understands about God, it falls short of the mode of what God is in himself. Therefore, the less determinate the names are, and the more universal and absolute they are, the more properly they are applied to God. That should just be claro for everyone. The more constricted the word, the less it can actually apply to he who has no constriction. Hence, Damascene says that he who is the principle of all names applied to God, for comprehending all in itself it contains existence itself as an infinite and indeterminate sea of substance. That word sea is also used, obviously metaphorically, because the sea has a boundary and a definition. Interesting conversation I heard from the mathematician, Mr. James Lindsay. The mathematician must assume that there's an infinite for a certain math to work. So the mathematicians just say, okay, infinite. But there's no proof that there's infinite. That's interesting. That's like getting to the edge of the computer program where all the things that have been fed into the computer program expend themselves. And like if a person were trapped inside the computer program, like a person came to consciousness, you take, let's use Assassin's Creed Black Flag, because it's a game I've actually played. If you were to tell Kenway that, and there's been people I've seen do this. I watched a video once of a guy going into a video game that you could speak to the people in the game, and he said, I'm going to try to convince them that they're not in the real world. It was like an AI thing. And he's like, I'm going to see what I can do to convince them and have them come into enlightenment that they're not in the real world. It was a fascinating YouTube video. Everything he would try, they just didn't understand what he was trying to say. We, on the other hand, God has given us an astonishing ability to think in that way. We can even abstract outside of any knowledge that we can have. We can peer into a possibility that there's something beyond all possibility. So that's like going to the very edge of the computer program. It's like God has given us the ability to come to the very edge of the Black Flag, where, you know, remember the old games where someone would, the character on the screen, you would try to get him to go up a mountain and it would start doing this because the program doesn't have that in it. It's like we come to the edge of the program and we're doing this, and it's saying you can't see that far. But God's given us the ability to say, okay, but there must be that. For everything inside the program to work, there must be something outside of it putting it together. And the mathematician says, we can't prove or see or demonstrate that there's eternity, but we need it for everything to work. That should be starting to tell you something. You should be able to put 2 and 2 together, as it were, in the math. Now, by any other name, some mode of substance is determined, whereas the name he who is determines no mode of being, but is indeterminate to all. It's not defined, it's not limited, and therefore it denominates the infinite ocean of substance. Third, from its consignification, that's a signifying with something, for it signifies present existence, and this above all properly applies to God, whose existence knows not past or future, as Augustine says. It's just saying that word he who is refers to all existence that is present in God right now. In our world, we have past, present, future, but in the mind of God, in the life of God, there is no such thing. He is all. And that's where our minds kind of break down and don't understand. Reply to objection 1. Now Thomas is going to get into the weeds of answering these questions. This name, he who is the name of God more properly than this name God, as regards its source, namely existence, and as regards the mode of signification and consignification, as said above. But as regards the object intended by the name, this name God is more proper, as it is imposed to signify the divine nature, and still more proper is the tetragrammaton, imposed to signify the substance of God itself, incommunicable, and in one way so to speak, it should say singular. The word God, and this is where it gets interesting, is in regards to Hebrew, because usually in Hebrew, in the Bible, when it's translated in English, the word God refers to Elohim. But when Thomas is using the word God, he seems to be using it as just a universal catchphrase for he who is that which is commonly referred to as God. And so it seems to me, if Thomas were here, I would ask him, but it seems to me the term Elohim is different than the word God in English. Elohim has to do with it, in its lowest form, has to do with a leader. In Hebrew, you can use the word Elohim for a leader or a judge. Sometimes in scripture, the judges are called Elohim, the judges. In Hebrew, it's just saying God is the big judge. God is Elohim. He is God. He is the great judge. And in also Jewish tradition, the tetragrammaton, everybody knows what I mean when I say that, right? The name of God, Yud Ke Vav Ke, Yahweh. That name in Jewish tradition has to do with God manifesting himself in mercy, Rachmon. And the word Elohim has to do with God revealing himself in din, or judgment. And also Elohim has to do with the plurality of manifestation in this world. They say that's why it's plural. Christians say, the Trinity. Then why don't the Jews believe? Because they already have an answer for that. They say that Elohim refers to God's multiplicity of manifestations in this world. He is constantly revealing himself to us through this world. So he's revealing himself to me through Joe, although very unclearly, and then quite more clearly through Paul, and then very clearly and beautifully through women, and then trees and birds and etc. So that's why there's a plurality. He's manifesting himself in all these different ways. That's Elohim. And the reason it's judgment is because judgment has to do with bringing about justice, and justice has to do with the proper alignment of things. So when God wants to properly align something interiorly to us, he starts moving the exterior manifestations in a way that is constricting to us, which makes us go in like the little turtle and make reparations and corrections. So I'll flesh that out in an example. It's the trials that we face in this world. Any trial, the fires in LA, hurricane, financial collapse, any sickness, whatever. These are constrictions that happen in this multiplicity of manifestations in the world, and it's a judgment which moves you to make corrections and justify yourself. Someone gets a little too arrogant, which of course I don't know anything about. As my old girlfriends would tell you, Craig, arrogant? No. So when Craig gets a little uppity and arrogant, God has to come with a little panic attacks, a little sickness, a little trauma. Yeah. Makes Craig have to go inside and make little corrections. So but what is that? That is mercy. That's why little Therese talks about, she's at the end, of course, she's ascending in consciousness because she's praying and working the virtues. She's actually doing the thing. She starts saying, I don't see the difference between justice and mercy. It's all one thing. Well, of course, she's starting to see it. Because it is actually one thing. Because God is one. Adonai Echad, blessed be his holy name. And that's the journey we're on. As you go further up the mountain, you start seeing how all of these towns and things that you've had down at base camp and further in the world are actually one country. But that's something you have to do through prayer and penance and tshuva, returning. And if you don't do it, God will do it for you because he's merciful. Okay, so Thomas uses that word G-O-D, not in that Elohim sense, it seems to me. He's using it and saying here to Larry, when we use the word G-O-D, that's a catch-all phrase that has within it all the other names and things. We're just using that word G-O-D to say, we're talking about the first principle, the first cause, the unmoved mover, and everything that flows forth from him and everything. That's what it seems to me that Thomas is saying. So that's why he's explaining to Larry, okay, sure. This word G-O-D is not limited like the word Ehiyah, because Ehiyah only has the aspect of his being, whereas the word Yahweh has a different aspect and the word Elohim has a different aspect. So Larry's trying to say this word, I am who I am, doesn't incorporate all the other things, but the word God does. And Thomas says, okay, yeah, you're right. But that word God is just a catch-all phrase we use to point to that. So it's not really a name per se, but this word Ehiyah is, and it's the most perfect because it talks about him in the present as being itself presently. Okay, huh? Well, we're about to be done. Thank you, Joe. Reply to objection 2. The name good is the principal name of God insofar as he is cause, but not absolutely. For existence considered absolutely comes before the idea of cause. Goodness, he says it comes before. As he said before, goodness and being are one. This is why it's so difficult to talk about God. There is no differentiation within him. He is one. But being comes first in our mind and explanation, and then we refer to that being as good. So this name good is the principal name of God insofar as he is a cause, and the cause comes first. Causes are first. Okay, reply to objection 3. It is not necessary that all the divine names should import relation to creatures, but it suffices that they be imposed from some perfections flowing from God to creatures. Among these, the first is existence, from which comes the name he who is. We do share in existence. So he's capitulating, saying, if we remember what the objection was, where is it? Further, every divine name seems to imply relation to creatures, for God is known to us only through creatures, but this name, he who is, imparts no relation. And he's saying, you're right, we do come to know things through relation, but once we've come to know them, we can then have the ability to abstract and see in our intellect that this name, he who is, has first reference to God. Therefore, we can say with Thomas that it is the name most proper to God. And that's the end of our little journey today. Tomorrow we go on to Article 12, which I believe is the last article of this question. Whether affirmative propositions can be formed about God. Can we say anything affirmative in a proposition about God? Everybody, guys, it's been good to be here. Back in the communal saddle and out of the hermitage. Everybody, what we're saying here is just straw, but use that straw to catch fire to the wood, and the wood catch fire and warm the whole house.